Wanda Maximoff, or the Scarlet Witch, is actually one of the most powerful beings in the entire Marvel universe. Like, seriously, most lists that you'll find will put her in the top 5, which is kind of incredible because you never see mutants hit a list like that because they tend to just be just a little bit more special than, say, like regular human beings. But she was dramatically enhanced by the Mind Stone. So if you think about it, it does make sense. But to me, when I think about what makes the Scarlet Witch so special, is that she has overcome such a difficult starting point in her life. She overcomes tremendous emotional loss and even has a redemptive arc in her story that makes her a very compelling character to want to play out on the table for Dungeons and Dragons. Now, putting together a build for someone who's just that much more powerful than anyone else isn't always easy to do, but I have some ideas that I think you're going to want to stick around for. Let's get started. Hello there, I'm Jake from JNJtabletop, and if this is your first time here at the channel, I'd like to welcome you and encourage you to take a look around. Josh and I want to help you get the most out of your TTRPGs and Dungeons and Dragons games. Now, the goal of this series isn't necessarily to make a carbon copy of the characters that we're talking about, but I tend to give myself bonus points if I can. But we want to look at what makes these characters special, find mechanics that can support the fantasy that you're looking to play out, as well as just discuss emotional journeys that these characters go on and really get to the core of what makes them fun and compelling to look into. So far, we've gone over Captain America and Iron Man, so I would encourage you to check those videos out if this sort of thing interests you. So let's get started at the beginning. In terms of like race or lineage, I think you've got a whole bunch of ways you could go here. Obviously, you could do human. I think you also could go Asimar, but I think a race like the Tiefling actually might make a lot of sense here because typically Tieflings in their base lore are looked at as odd, strange, or kind of beings that are typically ostracized, which fits with the Marvel way that they've depicted mutants throughout the history of the comics. Now, the thing about that is that can be very setting dependent based on how the campaign world you're adventuring in maybe treats tieflings. Maybe that's just not important in your game. Plus, there's nothing visually different about Wanda that would distinguish her from just some other person walking down the street. And that's going to just depend on you. I think there's a ton of options. Even if you're looking at like the Eberron guide, it's the what do you call it? The Kalashtar. How do you say that? If you know, could you let me know in the comment section? In terms of background, I think there really isn't necessarily one in the book that fits exactly where I want to go with this. So I think maybe like Haunted One or maybe Folk Hero. I don't, it doesn't necessarily fit, but I decided to customize my own version of Refugee because I want to highlight just how special a refugee is and really look at the kind of skills you'd have to develop because it's just such a difficult place to start. Let's take a look. You were forced to flee from your home, finding refuge in a foreign land. This experience has shaped your worldview. You choose insight and then your choice of either perception or survival as proficient skills. You can choose one tool proficiency of your choice because you've had to help develop skills to help make ends meet. I think you should probably take the language of the new location that you're in because that's just something that would develop naturally. In terms of equipment, we have a set of traveler's clothes, a reminder of home, and a pouch containing 10 gold pieces. And then the feature for this background is called Survivor. Your circumstances have taught you to quickly recognize situations that are dangerous. Once per long rest, you can give yourself advantage on either a survival check or insight check. You must declare that you are using this feature before you make the roll. Of course, feel free to change any of those things up as you see fit. I think backgrounds is probably one of the most customized features in Dungeons and Dragons, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about that in the comments section. And if you use it, I'd love to see how that goes at your table because I don't think there are many features that will grant advantage on a skill check, but I hardly think something like that is game breaking, especially if it's just once per day. In terms of class that comes for Wanda, I think you've got to go sorcerer because number one, if you're going to play like some kind of mutant fantasy, I mean, you got to go sorcerer, right? It's just something that's like in their blood and it just kind of happens naturally. So anytime you can do that, I think that's where you should go. And I think for her, I would go aberrant mind every time. Although I think you can make the case for wild magic. However, any perceived lack of control in terms of like her abilities seems to be more a lack of understanding that she can do something rather than she's not able to control what she's doing. I don't know. I feel like she's so powerful. I don't think wild magic fits, but wild magic's always fun, so why not? The kind of spells and themes that I would look to kind of engage with a character like Wanda, I would think she's not really someone who's known for like this like heavy damage dealer. Like she doesn't have like Thor's hammer and is just gonna smash something into a million pieces. She strikes me more as someone who can simply impose her will on the situation. She's in control. So I think if you're gonna deal damage, I'm probably going psychic damage. But I'm also thinking about like dominate spells. I'm thinking about charms, these kinds of things that are very like mental, that kind of stuff. I guess you could probably do illusions and stuff like that too. I guess WandaVision. I really feel like she. I don't know if those were illusions as much as she actually changed things. So I think that could also kind of be lumped in. But that's the zone that I'm thinking of. That's the fantasy that I'm looking to play out as someone who can just get her own way because she's just able to mentally impose what she wants to do on everything. It's kind of really someone you should not mess with. If I'm looking at feats that could enhance this build, first and foremost, I'm going to look at things like telepathic and telekinetic because it's going to allow you to just further lean into that mental psychic powers. And also, telekinetic lets you literally move someone into area of effect spells that you might be looking to do, which just further leans into the fact that your character is in control of the situation. And then, of course, you're playing a sorcerer, and Metamagic Adept gives you two more metamagic options that you could choose from very early on, as well as two more sorcery points. And that just means you could do more cool things more often, and that's totally what you should be looking for when you're going for a Scarlet Witch build. I also typically like to go over the kinds of equipment that maybe you should be looking into, but with sorcerers, equipment tends to not be all as important as say it would be for someone like an artificer or a fighter or something like that, like we talked about with Captain America and Iron Man. However, I guess I kind of like the idea of maybe like a magical tattoo that could be used as your arcane focus, kind of you are the thing that does what you need to do. Sometimes there's a little disconnect between sorcerers and the need for an arcane focus if the magic is in your blood or your soul. I feel like that's kind of the way that should be anyways. Is that game breaking? I don't know. Let me know what you think about that in the comments section. So I think if you did those things, you would get a very Scarlet Witch-like experience as a player at the table. I'd be curious to hear about anything you might do differently. And so if you could let me know in the comments section, and while you're there, get the thumbs up, the subscribe, and the bell, and all those things, I would greatly appreciate it, as well as want to check out some of the videos we have on the channel. We'd love to see you. All right, take care.